Now I'm going to make a razor page which will be in the form of a form which we use to collect data. So we're going to make our usual web app, but then we're going to put a tab here which will make a new page which contains a form, and then you'll be able to type in the data in here which will normally be added to the database, but in this case it'll just be flying around the database, actually flying around the program actually. And we're going to have a look at it using a debug and take a look at the value of the variables, but later on we would add it to a database. But just for the moment, that inputs data into our program. We're basically going to create a class of student data, that will represent the student data. But also in our pages we're going to create a folder forms, and in there we're going to have this particular file is going to contain a form. So let's go ahead and do all that. So first of all, we'll just start off by making a basic web app. So we'll make a new project and make it, as we've just done before, make a web app. And then it's a ASP create, and then doesn't matter what we call it for the moment or where we put it, but put our ASP.NET Core web application, and then we'll create that. But we're going to make a web application. You might like to just run that to see that all is well. And indeed we get our welcome page. So let me just stop that, and what we're going to do is to add a folder to our pages in which to put our form page. So I'm going to make add a new folder somewhere. There we are, and then we can just call that forms, in which to put our forms. Now you don't have to do that, but it's pretty typical to organize it. And so we're going to add a razor page. So I'm going to add a razor page, and don't forget we get 2 files when we do that. So 2 for the price of 1. So we add that. And the razor page name in this case is add student. And we can add that, and we should get 2 files produced eventually. In this case we've got they're the 2 files. This is the code behind, and this is the, shall we say, the HTML file, which is the one which is rendered. We could actually run that and see if we can see our new file. So when the usual index opens up, we could therefore take a look at our new file. And it doesn't show very much, and that's because I forgot to put the folder in here to which it belongs, the forms. Doesn't matter how I spell it. And there we go, there's our new form. You can see why we had to type forms, because it's within the pages folder. So C# will go looking by default in the pages folder for our forms, for our pages. And you can see it's in the folder, subfolder, and there it is. So we just type in add student, and hey presto, our new page appears. Now what we want to do is to make that into a form, or at least have it contain a form. So let me stop the program and take a look at that add student. That's the CSHTML file, and I'm going to now add my form code in here, and that means the form will simply be sitting inside that page. There it is. Now what that's doing here is producing a text box and another text box, simple as possible. And here we have a command button, which is, we can tell it's a command button, and then this will be the text on the command button within the form. So actually we could just run that as well and repeat the process to see that our form indeed it has been embedded into our page. So once again, if I type my URL in there, then you can see quite nicely it's got my a form embedded within that particular page. So let me just stop that from running, and of course the browser stops as well. And what I'm going to do now is to add some a class which represents the data. And I'll create a traditional folder which is called add a folder, a new folder, and we'll call it models is conventional place to put our classes which represent the data. So I'm going to add a new class in there, and I'm going to call that student. And add that, and let's take a look at that class. There it is, and I'm going to define a few properties for it. Comme ça. Voila. The ID and the name and the age. Right. Right. Now what we need to do is to relate that data to the form. Might actually rearrange all of these files if I just put them side by side for convenience. So here we have our student class referred to as a model. You'll hear a model view controller, and this one is the view. That's the model and the view. The view is really the one which renders it to the browser, which we've just seen our form in action. We'll talk about a controller as well, model view controller. Roughly speaking, this could be our controller, which deals with the URL and decides what to do with it. So once again, this is our model and this is our view. So let's make a property inside here, which we'll talk about as being an instance of our model class. So student, this is a an instance of our particular student class created in here. That's complaining at the moment, so we need to say where that is located, that so we can qualify it and say it's the web application 17 in the models folder, which is over here. So that's the location. So you're indicating where it belongs. I could probably get rid of those for the moment. Okay, now looking at this details property, this is the property we have defined. We've just made this up, and we're going to use that to refer over here to we're going to use the form to refer to that particular property. So what we need to do is to call it a bind property by applying that attribute, and then it will become visible, if you like, over here. Before we do that, we notice this complaining here, so let's see what that's complaining about and see if we can apply a fix. It says well, using Microsoft. No, let's try that. Yes, that seems to have caused it, so I prematurely deleted that one. Okay, so now over in our web form, we're going to try and relate this property, the details property, relate it to our form. And the way to do that is to add this, which relates the this is referring to the form text box. Maybe if I just run that, I could refer to show you what I'm referring to. So when I run the program, you see it comes up with the index page, but if I add that segment, then it brings up the I've left out a / that brings up, and you see now this particular text box here is referred to from here, so it's actually picking up the value, and we'll look at that in the single stepping in a moment, but it's picking up the value from there. And so that's one of the properties. We could take a look at the other property, which is it's quite amazing. I can do this while I'm still running the program, but you can see that the properties which come up are the properties of the student class, which you can see up here. So it's referring to those, and the one that we're looking for at the moment is the age, I guess. Okay, so we can now have, I'll just get rid of that, in fact close it, and we now are talking, liaising between these two files. And we need to qualify the form to say that the form is doing a post, which I think is the default method anyway. But a post means that basically we're using form rather than typing in the URL to input the data. So now I need to add a method in here which will handle the post as well. And that's it. It returns an action result. So what I'll do while I'm here is put a breakpoint in here and now run it. And take a look, and we'll add to our URL to get that particular page as before by adding our segment. And there's our okay, so now we can just add some data to there and then just add the student, and you can see it actually stops within the CS file. We can take a look in here, and if we go to our view our locals window, the debug locals window, Windows, and then the locals. Right, well it hasn't quite got there yet, so let's try an F11. Now it's gone to this line here. We can see now the details, and there you go. You can see that the properties of that property as we input on the form. I can just take the breakpoint off and just continue to run that. And that, just to remind you once again of what we did here when we added to the segment, that constituted a post. Constituted a get. A get is when we add it through the URL, but obviously that's got security problems where everyone can see what you're doing. On the other hand, so that's the get. When we're adding data to here, we're making a post. So you can see the difference, which is that the post is a more secure way of doing it. So that's the get and post.